I'm Andrea Bussey, CEO of IntelliText. We are headquartered here in Atlanta. We specialize in mobile engagement technologies, and we've been doing it for about 10 years now. So we're kind of the dinosaur in this space, and we've seen a lot of evolution. So excited to talk about it with you.
And then Therese.
Hi there. I'm Therese Giesing. I'm an online product manager with SunTrust Banks, focused on how do we engage our customers in the digital space. This is a very exciting topic for us, and the whole day has been filled with things that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
I'm Danny Davis with Proving Ground. We're here in Atlanta as well, and we build digital products across mobile, tablet, and web. So we're really interested when it comes to cross-channel engagement in the digital space.
Okay, so I've got a set of questions for them that I'm going to ask, and then we're going to throw it to the audience for questions that you might have about mobile engagement. So I'll start off, and then we'll move across and see what people have. So I'm going to start with Andrea, and our first question is about business to consumer. So what are some of the unique ways you've seen mobile engagement be used to engage the consumer?
That's a really loaded question. There's lots of answers. A few years ago, what we saw most was things that you might expect to see at a sporting event or a concert, text to screen, tweet to Jumbotron, mobile photo sharing, which now appears on your phone with digital framing and the ability to share it to Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. What we're seeing now more of is this personalization and being able to have people take part in the experience much more so than something that's just up on the Jumbotron or up on the screen. So one example is something that we've got going on with the NFL, where you can actually use the Kinect device and gesture technology, so now you're more immersed and engaged in the experience. You kind of create your own movements, which then ultimately lead to you getting your picture taken, either serious or in a funny pose, which then you're more apt to share. We're also using things like voice recognition and seeing that taking place of the traditional type something in. So the short answer is we've seen all of the big flashy campaign marketing kind of stuff give way to using some of the customized technology to create that experience for you, and that person standing in line or two people behind you may have a very different experience, but it's ultimately so enjoyable that now you want to social share that, and you're actually getting much more viral sprawl as a result of that personalization through technology.
So Therese, you're in the banking industry, so how are you communicating with your consumers over mobile?
So the biggest opportunity for us in mobile is figuring out what's the right thing to give somebody here. That there are opportunities when somebody's on the fly. They just need to know something real quick. They need to know their balance. They need to know a rate. So it's figuring out how do we customize that quick information against the content that we really want our people to engage with, which is what's going to help them figure out how to better their financial well-being. And so we see that we're having to track through lots of different experiences that way, especially in tablet, and making sure that we've got the right information for them to engage with. And so part of what we go back and forth with is how much do we give in each space.
Very good. So Danny?
Yeah, I think one of the ways we're challenging a lot of our clients is understanding that it's not so much mobile first, but it's the fact that mobile is the beginning of a relationship that usually continues and finishes on another device these days. So, there is a hangover, the channel hangover that says, if you look at a particular channel like mobile, I need to open an engagement with the customer and close it on a mobile device. Well, that's changing drastically. Even as a year ago, Google put out a study that said that 90% of consumers start on a mobile device and finish on a different device. And then you take into account the fact that that's usually not a linear path, that they're bouncing back and forth. A lot of the customization is about trying to deliver to customers what they want, when they want it, on which platform they want it, and to continue a relationship as they jump around from device to device. So some of the things we're seeing.
Yeah, and specifically one thing that we talked about as we were putting the panel together is the concept of like check-ins and likes and those kind of things as engagement. How does that translate over to mobile? Is that a good thing, bad thing? Do people still checking in, doing the Foursquare of that?
Yes, they are. There's a right way and a wrong way to do it, though, because some of it's tired. 5 years ago, that was really innovative. The challenge when you do something like that is the so what factor. yeah, I did it. So what? What's in it for me? Why did I invest that amount of my time, and what do I get out of it? And the whole reason we're at this summit is to hear about the hyper-personalization that people are now expecting from it. So in my opinion, the only way to make one of those campaigns successful now is to make it be cross-platform. So it should not only be mobile, but it should also have, of course, a social and digital and web experience. No matter which point of entry you come in, it should be seamless. We call it liquid. In addition, you've got to have the why, the what's in it for me, and it's usually much more than just I'm going to become mayor of my block. It's got to be something a little bit more in depth, and that actually requires marketers to think beyond the campaign and think like the individual, and that experience is going to be extremely different for a millennial than it would be for a baby boomer. So it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah, and a lot of the research that we did around QR codes, that was part of the issue, is that you would go and download something, then you got a QR code, and then you're like, and so? Like, what does that look like? So are there any kind of different technologies you guys use with consumers, maybe in the store, the banks, that support that?
You know, one of our big things is making sure that we are helping draw people across our touch points, because we do have different what's in it for them depending on what channel they're using. And pushing our digital channels as a way to take care of the day-to-day business so that you can have a richer experience when you're in person with someone, or when you're talking with your relationship manager about what are the next steps you need to take. So helping people figure out what's the right channel to do this in right now.
Yeah, I'm seeing technology as an enabler instead of in something that's in replacement. So Danny, any other kind of innovative?
Yeah, I would just say that as not so much technology innovation, but just a way of thinking about what's going on, right? Not to try to thwart what people are doing, but to enable it. So, you know, a lot of talk around trying to keep people from window shopping on their phone, right, as they walk around a store. Well, I mean, instead of trying to keep people from doing that, enable them to do that in a way that embraces your brand. You know, Walmart is seeing tremendous results in this approach. They see people who download their app and use it spend 40% more with them as a customer. So it's not just about trying to thwart their behavior, but rather let them be empowered to do that behavior, and then see how we can keep them related to our brand and passionate about our brand while they're doing it.
Yeah, there's a huge study that came out this week about how showrooming actually enables the retail channel, and it's something that they shouldn't avoid. So it's a good, I think CBS or ABC put that out. So we're going to move over to business, and then I'll come back and ask if anybody has any questions. So thinking about B2C, then we're going to move over to B2B. So B2B is slightly different. So the type of information I might want to give my employees, my clients, those types of things. What are some things you're seeing in mobile engagement around the business-to-business channel?
This is probably our highest growth sector right now. Companies are understanding the need for mobile engagement internally, in addition to just a traditional marketing approach externally. And we're seeing things like employee onboarding, training via mobile, cross-device. We're also seeing things like incentive programs. And companies are really looking to engage their employees in a way that increases productivity but makes it fun. So instead of handing them a 500-page employee handbook or making them go through a recertification process once a year that gets the groans and it's uncomfortable, now we can use gamification and make it fun. We can even make it a contest if you have a spirit in your culture that so warrants something like that. You can do some really interesting things that tie in your B2B to C as well, and make everybody feel like they're part of the game or part of the club. And again, that is one of the fastest growth areas that we're seeing, is people get this and they know how they want to feel as a consumer, and why not feel that way as an employee. And I'll give you one quick example. In the hospitality space, very large conglomeration of hotels out in Las Vegas are now taking something that has been very successful for them on the consumer side, which is mobile offers and mobile coupons and things like that they've always offered their guests, and said, this has been so great. Do you think we could actually turn this into an employee incentive program? We said, sure. So the idea is to take the same idea but make it an internal. Now, it won't have as an extensive list as what they're giving consumers, but employees are now going to be very energized to perform to the higher levels because they have a cookie, a dangling carrot that they're working toward, and all that's going to be done through mobile, regardless of that particular employee's device that they're using, and they're loving it.
So B2B engagement versus B2C for SunTrust?
So for us, from an internal perspective, we're constantly trying to figure out how do you help somebody to do their job more efficiently with these types of devices, and working through what that means in a regulated industry has been a challenge so far. slowly onboarding bring your own device, but it's going to take some time because we do have to be very careful about what regulations say we can do in this space. So we're always watching out for what people are doing socially as part of their marketing, and what people are doing with text messages, and what people are doing with things that could potentially put us in a situation where we might be at risk. And so it's a balance between enabling what our branch associates and our relationship managers and our advisory groups can do, while allowing for us to be protected.
So Danny, B2B space?
Yeah, some of the same internal, with the distributed workforces these days, companies with people across the country, across the world, a lot of times when it comes to training material, or if it's healthcare initiatives to educate, whether it's travel deals, anything like that, that a company has to distribute over mobile devices, that's becoming more and more prevalent. Also on the acquisition side, or the engagement and B2B customer side, we're seeing more and more that business buyers are acting more and more like consumers, really. So at the end of the day, mobile is an interesting way to reach them, and to enable them to exhibit some of the same buying behaviors they would do if they're buying in a commerce, more traditional sort of consumer commerce situation, but now they're making business decisions. They're on the go, they're in a hurry, they need information quickly on a mobile device, and they also like to get feedback from their peers and other people. They like to see reviews of what's going on, even in the enterprise space. So some of those behaviors are really starting to prevail on the B2B side.
Yeah, it's a really interesting assumption that as a consumer, you change when you go to work. Like
Yeah.
you walk in the door and you do things differently, especially with BYOD, bring your own device, bringing those things in, using them, and what you do with that. Like that's a really new, interesting phenomenon. I wanted to talk about, and you touched a little bit about being a regulated group, but then some concerns, some things that if I'm a B2B customer, what do I need to worry about from a mobile perspective?
It's more about the permissions and incentivizing them from the very beginning to opt in or engage correctly. And if you're doing it the right way, it becomes a delight. If it becomes a hassle or a challenge, then you run into all the issues of regulation. And then you, of course, have the new Wireless Express consent law coming down the pike, I think October 16th. And you've got unbelievable challenges when you're dealing with mass marketing, even on a B2B scale or B2B side, because you're not going to be able to reach out anymore the way you have, which was more throw spaghetti at the wall. So if you're trying to reach people personally, it doesn't matter if you're doing personalized dynamic texting, if it's some type of geo-fencing or something like that you're trying to target them with, whether it's B2B or B2C. You've got to make sure that now and forevermore, you are dealing up front with kind of the 900-pound gorilla in the room, which is what do you want to hear about through what mechanism or what channel modes of communication, and how often, because that's the fastest way to turn a customer off. That's what we're talking about today. And I will say that one of the issues that we have seen is a lot of companies, I'm sure a lot of you in the room, are thinking, hey, we're doing really good with our mobile engagement or with our overall customer-consumer engagement strategy. We got a company over here that we do text messages with. We've got a company over here that does our SEO. This company did our mobile app, right? And it goes on and on and on and on. And we're starting to see companies are having to juggle sometimes 14 to 20 different vendor suppliers that are somehow supposed to all be singing the same chorus to your customers and prospects, and that becomes a huge challenge because this one might get it right and this one gets it wrong. So it's more important than ever on the what we're doing, which we're talking about today. We're trying to coalesce, right? Why are we doing it? Because the markets are demanding it. We've gotten all of great information about that today. Now it's how. How do we do that? And one of the hows is to combine or try to be careful on who you choose as supplier vendors, that they can actually go a level above and they're not so tactically focused, because that's when you run into the pitfalls. Somebody that can look at the overarching strategy and really help you with multiple technologies at once.
So I have an interesting question for you around SunTrust is primarily, so what's the
Footprint is primarily the Southeast when it comes to our retail bank, though we do commercial and lending across the country.
Okay, and I'm gonna ask this question, but then Andrea may actually answer part of it for us. So, thinking about multi-language support, is that something that you guys consider because of the way that you're set up, or?
So it is a primary concern. I mean, especially here in the Southeast,
Well, we speak Southern, right?
Well, we speak Southern, but we also have a lot of Spanish-speaking clients. One of the big things that we have to watch out for is when we're touching omni-channel, when we're going through those different touch points, if we can't offer a solution in somebody's native language, we have to be really careful about doing it. So we do have some use of multilingual materials, and we watch where we put them and make sure that we can operationally support them within our rules of how we need to move. We have actually had to say we can't offer that type of support in certain environments because of some of the legal requirements of how we market. But it is a day-to-day choice, and it's one we're looking at, for all of our channels.
And so, Andrea, I'm going to come back because I know that you work in this space specifically. So companies that are looking at like multiple countries, that kind of thing, supporting multiple languages from a mobile perspective, different, harder than regular for e-commerce?
It doesn't have to be. I think it becomes a very daunting task when you think about, well, we've got a majority of our materials are in English, but maybe we've got a Spanish sector, but wow, if we could just capitalize on this Asian market, we could probably increase our bottom line by 30% if we had the ability to do it. And then you keep adding and adding the what if sectors. Technology is now advanced to the point where we have the ability to send out very hyper-personalized dynamic text messages, and the language of choice is one of the preference center questions. There's technology that allows you to sniff the device and tell what the native settings are set to, and if they're set to English, it'll serve it up in English, but if they're set to German or Korean, then it can potentially serve it up to them in that language. However, it's always better to ask. As part of the preference manager, it's going to be a very valuable question to say, what language would you prefer to have it in? Because if you bought your phone here in the US, it's defaulted to English. But if I say, well, I have a choice, I can get it in Japanese, bring it on, right? So in that case, you've got two choices. How do you currently deal with your communications internally and externally in market? I'm going to call it in market US. Also, you've got larger companies that are doing international work and want to be able to offer the same level of experience and the same level of support to those international customers, not to mention the ones right here in our backyard that would prefer that. Technology is there. We have arrived. So if you have that interest or have that need to be able to communicate, whether it's video texting or whether it's blogging or whatever it is that you're doing, and you want to hit all those market sectors, it doesn't have to be as painful as the old school interpreters and translators. The technology is there. It's possible.
Okay, great. So I've got two questions for you, Danny. So one is, what the heck's up with iOS 7? Kidding. So iOS, sort of. So what sort of iOS 7? So what are the advantages of thinking about if I've already got a mobile app, I'm starting to move into that? Why would I consider redesigning for iOS 7? Is there a reason? Those types of things.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of reasons for iOS 7. Let me piggyback a little bit on the language settings just for a second. I'll move into that. I think that one of the most interesting things about a centralized preference center across channel is the fact that nobody likes to restart a relationship, right? So I think marketers could learn a lot from paying attention to the entertainment industry and some of the things they're doing here. But and language in particular is a very personal thing. And so if I encounter you here and you're speaking my language and I like that, then I encounter you here and you change languages on me, I got to restart my relationship with you and explain to you who I am and what I'm interested in. So I think there's an interesting component to that. But for iOS 7, I think one of the biggest things for our clients right now that either had apps in the store or they were thinking about releasing one is obviously all the buzz that goes along with the marketing buzz that Apple will push themselves around iOS 7. So also we saw in some of the earlier tests on iOS 7 when it was in beta before it was out in public that a lot of the people that we had testing iOS 7 were abandoning apps pretty quickly if they didn't fit the mold of what they were expecting out of the iOS 7 experience. So I think that that companies that are not paying attention or aren't quick enough to adjust to it could see a large drop off either on uninstalls or in engagement. So that's a major thing.
And so for SunTrust, when something like that, there's a new application or a new device operating system coming out, how do you guys?
Lots of preparation.
But you're prepped when it's ready, or is it something you do like fast follower?
It's something that we try and keep as far ahead of as we can. In the case of iOS 7, we were working on that months ago.
Okay.
And it's we do a lot of testing and a lot of validation, because if that thing doesn't work right, we hear about it right away, and we hear about it in the stores, we hear about it in the branches, we hear about it in the social media networks, and it's the little thing, right? It's the one day that you can't get your check to deposit when it did the day before. So we do a lot of testing to make sure that when those transitions happen, we get people there successfully.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I heard about some customers who received messages from their bank saying, "Do not upgrade. You will no longer have your check deposit capability." So I'm going to ask you guys about a term that people use often, and I think that it would be great to have some experts define it for us, because it's sort of thrown out there, and I think I see different people using different ways of defining it. So what the heck is responsive design?
So
Ooh, great.
I'm happy to
Love
chip in
that.
on this one. It is one of my favorite techniques. It is the dream of building a customer experience online that works for any client, wherever you are, whenever you are. It allows for scale. It allows for ease of operations, and it meets the need of finding your customer where they are in whatever channel you're delivering to them in. There's so many of these, right? Like, you could look at your user stats when you're an online site manager, and you see 20,000 Android devices coming through your stats. You cannot customize the user experience for each of those devices. So how do you take what is most important about what you offer to your clients online and present it in a way that works for them if they are on their phone and they just need a quick bit of information, or if they're on a desktop and they've got time to dive in, or they're on a tablet and they're watching TV while they're scanning your site. We now served all of those. And we do it once, and we've prioritized our message so that it works in all those channels.
So that feels like that's a good definition of what it is. So how do I do it? Like, if it's responsive design, what does that look like? Is it tough? Is it easy? How do you plan for it?
Well, I mean, I know Andrea knows this, but responsive design really isn't a new technology or a new technique. It's been around for quite some time on the web. I mean, it was just the idea, the fact that you would detect what browser and what operating system they're on, and you would customize the look and feel. Using JavaScript and HTML5 and some other buzzwords. So it's been around for a while. It's just now that we're detecting devices, and it changed from the old in the old days it was called liquid design for a while, and now it's responsive for some reason. And really, I think it's because they're trying to say that we're responding to different devices. So it's been around for a while, and of course, I think it is much harder now than it was before, because when we were doing liquid layouts for desktops, we were dealing with relatively the same scale and size. I mean, some of the things were much bigger, but now we're dealing from a drop, from something that's 19, 26 inches big, down to 1.5 inches or 6 inches big, right? So I think that a lot of times people think responsive design is an easy answer because I'll apply these mechanisms, everything will shrink, right? But the problem is, if you do that, your experience is going to be very bad. You need to rethink how you're going to shrink this material and present it in a way that allows a consumer to get what they want pretty quickly, because most websites are designed for longer times on the site. Longer engagement cycles, whereas a phone is much more fire, forget engagements.
Yeah, it's not just applying a technology layer, it's also thinking about what's the priority of where that person is, and organizing your information and transactions within that responsive framework so that somebody here doesn't see all of the long white paper that isn't going to be good for them here, so that somebody who's looking at something on a large screen monitor, part of our testing that helped trip us over was that we had really poor voice of customer feedback from people on a really big monitor because our site is really narrow in the middle. And so they weren't able to see the information well. So with thinking about how do you prioritize what it is you're delivering to your customer in that channel, and then using the technology to help make that an easier operational opportunity.
Okay. So I'm going to ask them about the future of mobile and some of the mobile engagement things we think are interesting. But before that, I wanted to know, do we have any questions from the audience? Somebody, we've got a question. So we have the microphone, Darcy, please. And wait, I know we can hear you, but wait until we get there. We'll get it on the tape too.
Okay, I have two questions. The first is on trends, having to do with telematics, which is the process. You're nodding your head, so I assume you're probably familiar with this already because you're mobile. Our company is doing quite a bit of work and research and development on that right now for a couple of manufacturers. And one of the scares that we have at our level in deciding what to do with this technology is the invasiveness of the customer receipt of the communication upon capturing the data in their vehicle, and we're concerned, as to where that trend is really going to go. We're spending a lot on that development right now in time, mainly because, we're being paid for it and our manufacturers want it, but we're watching where this trend is going to go because it hasn't really arrived yet. but we're watching parallel trends in terms of invasiveness of privacy and so forth, and what Apple's doing with the new iOS 7, all the permissions in their licensing agreement that you're giving you don't even know about. And so what is your viewpoint on where you see this trend going on? Do you see limitations being introduced once everyone comes to the realization when they wake up that every single thing I'm doing is being tracked, all my data is being captured, and that's being pushed back to me, but how much of it is really stepping over that boundary of that privacy line, and what are we doing to, control or manage that? Where do you see any kind of guidance, legislation, control, regulations going in on how this world of data is being captured and being pushed back to us right now, mobilely?
So a couple things before it's answered. One is you'll love the 1 o'clock session with compliance points, so make sure you go to that one.
I will be there.
And the other is, can someone, before you answer the question, whoever's going to do it, define telematics for us so that we're all using the same definition?
Okay. So we're starting to see a pervasiveness of technology cross-platform, including in Dash. For example, you're seeing Sync, and you're seeing some of the OnStar, and some of these types of things where it's not just about your handheld device. You're actually using new technologies to be able to include your, what I'll call, point of action experience wherever you are. And we're really changing, the phrase mobile. If you ask everyone in the room what is the definition of mobile, it would be something different. I think ultimately mobile is where you are. It's where your eyeballs are, where your time and where your attention lie. And that's happening now, especially for automotive. That's happening more in Dash and in your personalized experience. And we're using things like geofencing and targeting. And, of course, we're running service models into that as well. But there's a right and a wrong way to do it. And when you're having consumers that are willing, and they're just now willing, 5 years ago, there was a lot of hesitation on giving you some of these preferences even, let alone personalized information in exchange for these experiences. But I've noticed in the last 2 or 3 years, and we've seen all kinds of studies where people are loosening their grip, and they're opening these tight-fisted experiences up to hyper-personalization. And I wish I could quote the stats specifically, but I think about 3 months ago, I don't remember if it was Gartner or Forrester, who it was that came out with this poll that talked about how people are trending toward providing more and more of their personal data. And I don't just mean demographic data, I mean personal data, in exchange for these hyper-personalized experiences. And they're doing it not just on their own devices or on a web experience, but they're doing it through some of these other technologies of where they reside or where they interact. And it's interesting to watch what's happening with telematics, and especially what's happening in the automotive industry with it, because it's this big boulder that's all of a sudden started to just kind of roll downhill, and there's a lot of fear. Are people willing to cross that line? Well, that line has been blurred over the last couple of years. And I would say there's not a distinct line per demographic or per segment like there used to be. It's driving media buyers crazy because there is no hardcore segment anymore. How you engage through all of these different touch points is purely personal. You'll have that baby boomer that can rock their iPhone, and they want all that in-dash experience. They want that overarching CRM data to be used for their experience. And then you'll have the people that draw that hard line. Why do you need to know? Well, what are you going to do with it? As long as a marketer is able to convince through explanation and education, and Hernan talked about, nurture them, love them, give them that support as to why you need it. Inoculate them against the objection before they ever bring it up. We would like to know this about you. And here's why, because it serves you, Mr. Customer, and we're going to not only serve you on your phone and on the web, we're going to serve you in your vehicle, we're going to serve you in the service bay. And they go, oh, okay, that's good. And you're not going to do anything with my data? No, sir. Unless you expressly tell them, hey, we're going to do this with it. So we're seeing the new trend. It's relatively new. In the last year and a half, it's really opened up. And now it's trending upward and upward and upward. I don't think we'll see a reversal.
And Forrester talks about this year. It's called the Mobile Mindshift Index. So if you look that up under Forrester, Mobile Mindshift Index, about the changing desire for how these things kind of collect information and then serve us. So you had 2 questions, or was that?
Yeah.
Do we?
I was going to ask the second one. The other thing is there's the process. We're all fighting for that decision equity with the customer. And there is the process of this ad liquidity that happens with the change of where you're moving device to device, how you're capturing that customer. We have another product we're working on right now for a European firm, but it has to do with as the customer runs location services tracking on his device, and he is able to be contacted by retailer as he makes a actual geographical transition by retailer. So if you're walking through the mall, for example, and you are in a certain database and God only knows where your data's gone, you're going to start receiving advertising or offers or some sort of reach as you're walking by the retailer in the mall on your device. You find yourself standing there chatting with your friend, and next thing you know, you turn around, you have an ad from the Gap on you, and you turn around, you're right in front of the Gap. So this is a really invasive sort of a process of advertising, we consider it is, but it is just a hot potato right now for advertisers, just throwing money at this type of technology and research. Where do you see that trend going right now? Is this something that you're finding, that you're working on, or you have your hands in this, you're delving into this direction? Like, where's all this going? Like, I kind of feel like I'm not really in a sea of knowledge or experience that's being talked a lot about this right now.
So he boiled it down. He wants to know, do we want to live in the Minority Report movie?
I'll take a first crack and then I'll turn it over. But yes, everybody wants it except the consumer. And that's the blunt, dirty answer is yes, I want hyper-personalized, relevant, timely, targeted mobile messages. But do I want them every 20 feet? And by the way, this isn't a new concept. For 10 years, we've had retailers and big box brands talking about this, thinking that they were going to be the first one to crack this nut. With RFID technology, near field to some extent, and then with geo, indoor and outdoor geo tracking, it's more possible now than ever. And technology has now enabled us to get down to the 5 square foot, no longer just this block, this city block. So it's very enticing, but it's a little bit moth to a flame for brands. And we always consider the end result for them. So they're very quick to throw money at it, very quick to come up with different ways that they can apply it, especially in a shopping mall or a retail environment. This is also very hot for entertainment, very big along like the Vegas Strip. Everybody wants that, decision part of the equation. Careful. There's a lot more conversation to be had. Just careful, patience, tolerance, be the consumer in that scenario. And I was having a conversation with somebody earlier. If you're a car dealership and I'm a owner of that particular automotive manufacturer, but I live on one end of the strip and I work on the other, and I always go to lunch, a block away, do I really want 5 text messages as I geo-fence and trip it? Do I want it at 6:45 in the morning when they're not even open? No, there needs to be a decision engine and some rationale and business intelligence that goes in behind it, which is all highly possible, and we do it all the time, that says, I only want it every so often, and only if there is a quick lane or a service lane that's open and available, and if I happen to be at that moment that I need it. Otherwise, don't bother me. So there's a tolerance. It's possible, but there's a tolerance.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely, and I think that there's a couple of traps here. One is we already see this. Well, we've seen this already happen in email. So this is just email all over again, just on a different device. And we're already seeing it today in the app world because everybody a lot of brands are excited about building an app so they can do push notifications. Well, that's kind of a trap too, right? So now people get so many notifications, so many apps perhaps, that they don't even notice it anyway. So if you're pushing me ads every 20 seconds, on top of the notifications I'm getting from 3 other apps I've got installed, plus the Facebook notifications I might be getting on my phone, plus this, it's just going to be more noise, just like the old school email inbox was. So that's where the need for preferences and the reason for a centralized preference center is going to be a big deal. So I think that's there, and I do think it's a little bit. Well, Andrew was saying it's technology for technology's sake right now. There's a trap that you're going to chase the wrong metrics, right? How many ads can I get in front of somebody so I can drive up conversions at the same time killing a customer experience or a customer opinion of my brand, right? So I think it usually starts with trying to figure out, much like Scott was saying, what journey am I trying to take this person on? And as part of that journey, do I fit in, location-based services in a way that's constructive and not just annoying, right?
And as a follow-up, so Therese, because you are a brand, how do you decide? Like, how do you determine what you're going to do and not do?
So the big driver for us is, where does it fit into, one, what are our customers telling us they want? And 2, why would we bring them something that makes them more stressed? So a big part of our brand right now is how do we help you be less stressed? Because money is stressful. And that's one of those items where if you don't get somebody's immediate buy-in that they want a note when they walk past a branch, or they want a note to, don't spend that money, you're being invasive, and you're not growing the relationship with your customer, and they'll tell you so.
Great. So do we have another questions? And then I've got some things about the future. So questions about mobile engagement with your customers. Okay, so I will ask the next question I have, and then we'll see if there's some at the end. So what I want to talk about now are opportunities. So things you see people maybe not taking advantage of in the mobile channel, things that are like trends moving forward, some things that maybe kind of are on the horizon that would be helpful, depending upon the type of brand you are, to engage your customers.
Okay.
Yes.
So things that I think are being underutilized: personalized texting. Even if you're a big fan of the brand, if you get a generic text message, you still feel like an outsider, right? If you get a text message that says, "Good morning, Jonathan. Welcome to Chicago," because it knows you're not where you normally are, so now it's geo-tracking. Do you know you're within 1.8 miles of a Macy's? As a preferred or mobile VIP or loyalty club member, get 20% off today for you only. Would you like us to use your location and walk you door to door? You're now incorporating navigation. Now you've walked into the door, you get your 20% discount, boop, you scan it, or you somehow show a single redemption offer that you can't game the system or forward out on Facebook. And as a result of that, now I, as that consumer, feel like James Bond. I feel special, and I was served in the process. The brand is happy. Macy's just sold you something. Kenneth Cole is happy, whoever the brand is that you bought. And everybody wins. So I think dynamic, personalized texting is very underutilized. As far as trends that we see happening, this year alone, we've done more with augmented reality than we've done in the last 9 years of our company combined. It finally hit. Everybody's been talking about it for a long time, and here it is. We've seen it used in the hospitality space to upsell things like suites and spa services and golf outings. We've seen it used in the automotive industry quite a bit to upsell things like Ford's new EcoBoost engine, or be able to walk you through an experience through your tablet or your phone that you can't get unless you go to a dealership. We've also seen augmented reality used in things like campus tours for colleges and universities, because the average student is visiting 30+ schools anonymously. These secret stealth visitors are killing some of these brands. If you can use augmented reality to then enhance that experience for them and make it more emotional and more personalized, then you will attract more sales. And so those are a couple of hints.
So in the banking industry, what's the cool new technology for
So
banking?
one of the key things we're focused on is something that Andrea had mentioned earlier, which is that mobile isn't just the tablet or the phone. It's engaging with your customer wherever they are, and to that end, helping to make sure that we've got a way for somebody to carry throughout each of those channel experiences, and making sure that somebody trusts that what they see here is what somebody in a branch would tell them, or what an associate on the phone would tell them, and helping to bridge between each of those different channels so that somebody can experience it seamlessly.
So validity of data across the channels. So if I call in, I'm going to get the same number. Very good.
Yeah, so some media opportunities. I mean, there's still an interesting web hangover, I'd say, when it comes to designing mobile experiences right now, in a couple of different ways. One, I said this before and I said it again. I think if you're trying to design experiences in a mobile, tablet, cross-platform way, take a look at the way the games are pushing the envelope. The game industry has done a lot of really interesting things over the last few years, and I think brands can learn a lot about how to create a different experience on a mobile device. I mean, and an example is, I bet if you pull up, if you have 5 or 6 shopping apps, on your phone, and you pull them up, I bet they all look almost exactly the same. And so there's really not much going on mobile to deliver a brand promise across the device right now, and to differentiate yourself from, Target, from Walmart, from Belk, from whoever it is. So I mean, there's some opportunities there that are immediate right now. I mean, the future is obviously the fact that they're putting chips in everything. I mean, we talked about cars. It's going to be in refrigerators, it's going to be in your toaster, it's going to be in your closet. The amount of data is going to be overwhelming, and so there's some really interesting opportunities there in the future for preferences, for centralizing data, for engaging customers in interesting ways. I mean, you see Google Glasses coming out, and that may not be you're not going to see everybody probably wearing a lot of
Somebody
Google
mentioned it
glasses.
already. I was going to say
Right.
nobody mentioned Google Glass, but
Yeah, but you know, it's obviously the things to come. You talk about augmented reality with with Google Glasses. That's fascinating. I mean, and augmented reality it is coming on strong. And outside the industries Andrea talked about, there's you know, things like home decor. You know, you think about shopping for a washer and dryer, and does it fit? You know, what does it look like? You know, those kinds of things. Now you can go home and perhaps take a look at what it's going to look like. Does it fit it not? Things in the kitchen, things that comes to furniture. I mean, there's lots of ways now for people to experience things without having to buy them and take them home, especially the bigger they are. In architecture, you know, what if I can walk on site with my client and show them the building, you know, through the phone and where things are going to be on site, right? There's some fascinating things going.
great. And so as a channel, because we did the conversation or the question at the beginning about are you undecided, where are you? How long can I wait to move things mobile? Like if I'm a brand and I don't have a mobile strategy, do I have as much
People
longer?
are already there.
Okay. So
Yeah,
as long as
it's-
the internet, I don't have that long.
We took a look at our engagement statistics when it just came to just visits, right? Not even time, not transactions. We get 1 to 2 visits a month for people who their branch is their primary channel. We get 20 plus a month when this is their primary channel. They're there. It's not, you don't even have to think about it anymore. You know, like everything should be thinking about where do I get to this person here?
Very good. And so I'm curious in an app, because I have some thoughts and I'd like to see from an expert's perspective, how long do you have to kind of get someone's attention and see that the app is going to be useful to them before it becomes clutter?
You mean after they've downloaded it?
Yes.
You better win. You better win.
You better win.
You don't have long. And you know what we're really seeing, guys? Every company, can we just show of hands, whose company has an app? Oh, come on. Yeah, see? How many of you have a mobile optimized website? See, so here's what's happened. Over the last couple of years, you know, it was the big trend. Everybody had their websites, and that was all good, a lot of money in the websites, and then we had social and search engine optimization, all that, and that's still going, and then everyone, I have to have a mobile app. But nobody really asked why. You just have to have a mobile app. And I meet people, big companies all the time. You're
Can I get
working
an
on a
app?
mobile app.
Can I get an app?
Yes. And when you ask them why, they look at you like, well, what do you mean? Don't we have to have one? What do you mean why? It's a mobile app. We have to have one. We're doing a lot of education and convincing people they may not need a mobile app. Or if they do, it may just need to be cloud-based or hybrid. You know, a hybrid app is usually more than sufficient, where maybe only 5 or 10% of the functionality is actually on the device in Aperture, and the rest of it all lives in the cloud. So now you're not burdening your consumers or your employees or whoever you're reaching with all of this big, chunky, heavy data, and it's not sitting on your phone, because that'll irritate people. And as soon as you do an update, yeah, that's gone. So being able to provide them more cloud-based and hybrid app solutions that are actually still meeting the goal, that's the trend.
So mobile's bite-sized chunks.
It's don't talk to me unless it's absolutely relevant. And if it's bite-sized and it serves my need, I'm checking my quick balance, or it's a fraud alert, or it's something I need, I love you. But if you start trying to sell me on the benefits of some kind of new checking account on my mobile device, it's not going to happen. So it doesn't even matter the length. If it's bite-sized, as long as it's very pertinent and relevant, and that's the reason we're all here at the summit, you just always have to win. It's better to say less. If you just every once in a while you whisper over mobile, you will move mountains versus shouting with your megaphone daily. You'll blow the customers out.
Those were 3 tweetable things you just said. So
I think some of that hangover is that you're going to see a lot of retooling around is early on when it came down to let's make a mobile app. It was like, well, let's take all the features we have in our company and let's throw it into a mobile device, right? As if, you know, you're going to spend time to use all those features. Plus, you have so much less screen space to get either a message across or deliver value. And not enough companies were spending time saying, what is my brand promise? Because the interesting thing about mobile first, any kind of mobile first initiative, is that what you're trying to figure out is how can I take the promise I'm making to my customers as a brand and fitting it into a tiny space and allowing them to get what it is in 2 seconds or less, and let them start interacting with me with value, right? And we're coming off of the high of having massive amounts of space where we can provide lots of different options and lots of different copy to try to prove that brand value. And so it's a very interesting change, and I think lots of companies we're going to have to be retooling coming off the hangover of let's just build an app and let's use the web as a formula for how we're going to use a mobile app. So.
So do we have any questions before we do some housekeeping and then go to lunch? I know that's terrible. It's like, no, I don't want to have any questions. I want to go to lunch. All right, well, thank our panel very much today. Thank you very much.